you mentioned you miss the secrets.
I do.
So you read the news,
Yeah.
and what is happening? I mean, this is too broad a question, but like what is happening behind the scenes that people don't realize? How much of the news is just total propaganda and just missing 50%, 90% of the detail?
So I want to pin that on you because that's the right question. And I want
Yeah.
you to answer it honestly because he's asking the right question. How much of the news is wrong?
Well, I mean, I think if it's a proper news source and they are reporting facts, right? Like observable facts, then they're getting those right. The problem is that so much of news media isn't reporting facts, it's so much opinion. And when you start getting into the opinion, so much of that is just what's the word, conjecture, right? They're guessing. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, just like you were saying. There's a lot of backroom conversations that are happening that the media will never see, right? What they see is what the governments want them to see. When the U.S. government or the government of France comes out and makes some kind of big, like, oh, we're doing this now. Who knows what's really happening behind the scenes? Something is happening behind the scenes, but we will never be privy to that until the next big announcement, you know?
So, and I just want to chime in because what Jihi said there is with the very professional, journalistically sound news sources,
Mm-hmm.
what they report that's observable is factual. Well, we all know your journalistically sound news sources are increasingly shrinking. There's probably three that you can think of, right? Like Reuters. I would say Reuters is journalistically sound. The Economist is journalistically sound.
Do you think that one political party or another is better at providing a broader clarity as to what's happening, or they're equally culpable in their facade that they're presenting to the world?
Equally culpable. Yeah, I do not think the political parties.
Until you've
Yeah.
been on Capitol Hill and actually watched these assholes yell at each other on camera and then have lunch together and give fist bumps, you don't get it. It's so twisted and
So it's all
perverted.
theater.
Yeah.
It's all theater.
It's all theater.
And in the US government, it's all theater because at the end of the day, they all want the same thing.
Yep.
They all want a re-election, another term in office. They
Mm-hmm.
all want to make sure that they don't have to go find a real job. They all want to make sure that they can vote and control their own salaries. That's really what they want. And then they want to make sure that any newcomers that come in understand this is how business is done.
Mm-hmm.
And then the American people, we give them permission to do that because we only show up at like 30% to vote anyways. And they know that. So they know exactly who the 1 out of 3 people is that's going to show up to vote and exactly what to say to get that constituent to come out every midterm. And that's what they do when the time comes to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask a difficult question that a lot of people are talking about and is probably not fair to put the weight of this question on you. What's happening with Epstein? What is it that people don't actually know?
I think the Epstein issue is so interesting because I really think it just shows the American public that the government is the government. No matter who's in there, there is no draining the swamp. You can't do it. It functions just like Andy was saying. The government functions the way it functions. Anybody new who comes in is told that this is the way it is, and you can't change it from the inside. And so it's nice for me to see the American public slowly, hopefully, waking up to the fact that we can't change it from the inside. There's nobody who's going to enter the government who can change how it functions, because once they're in there, they're in power.
If you have the head of the FBI,
Mm-hmm.
the deputy director of the FBI who potentially have control of what information gets out, who is controlling the information if not them?
Everybody in the government works in their own self-interest. So if it's not in their own interest to release the information, which is probably not, and there's also laws and regulations that probably, hinder some of the things that they've been asked to do. But for the most part, they're just working in their own self-interest. And that's why nothing's going to happen, because it doesn't help them or the current administration to release that information.
The self-interest piece is the piece to understand. Because what most Americans get wrong is we believe that the government is there to serve the people. Maybe it was written somewhere, but it's not. The government is not there to serve the people. The government is there to serve the government, right? In the event of a nuclear war, as long as the government of the United States exists, then the United States exists. Even if all the people are lost.
I've seen that episode of Succession. Whoever's in the safe room is all who they care about.
Yeah.
And it's real. It's real because the government is what defines the national identity.
I don't want this to be a partisan statement, but I think before the first Trump presidency, things felt a little bit different.
For sure.
They felt a little bit different in terms of news, press, media, just even the conversations about them. You know, I'm not like putting this on Trump, but something definitely has shifted in that it feels like, you know, if you look at kind of political perspectives as a bell curve, it feels like news is now operating from these two tail ends, you know, and we have kind of like the most extreme on the left and we have the most extreme on the right, which sound very similar because it's all a circle, right? And it feels like that notion of kind of a middle has sort of fallen out. And, you know, it's paralleled by sort of like the loss of the middle class that we talk about, you know, this kind of like stratification, you know, based on class and things like that. But I think that there's still, you know, for the bleeding heart liberals among us, there's still like, I'm just going to say this, like someone like Bernie Sanders, this like grouchy, crotchety, you know, he's pretty consistent, right? And kind of seems like that renegade that, you know, many of us thought the left could be. So many people in the Obama era, right, were like, there's a new wave of hope and we're going to all make nice, you know? And I think of people like AOC, who I think is challenged by exactly what you're talking about, because she came in and kind of like, oh, we got like a Bernie vibe, but then like it starts teetering and then it's like, oh, is she more right? Meaning like right-wing people
Yeah.
now, or it's like everybody's picking on everybody. Is that just sort of the inevitability of this system? Like, is Bernie Sanders the only holdout who seems to be like riding his ship all the way into the sunset?
Well, you've got a couple of things. I think that's a great question. And I think Bernie's a great example, because what you have with Bernie Sanders is somebody who's so consistent. He's even fucked by his own party,
Sure.
right? And he is so true to his vision that he can be like sidetracked or derailed
Mm-hmm.
by the people he trusts, because he trusts them to be of the same vision.
Right.
And it's just a great example of how things are falling apart. I agree with you that things seem radically different post-Trump. What we learned at CIA is that we really started to see the change in the first 2 years of the Obama administration. Because in the first 2 years of the Obama administration, Obama walked in and he was young enough and youthful enough that he saw the problem and he was like, I'm not going to play this game anymore. And he took the presidential powers that were given to him by all the congressmen that didn't want to have responsibility, right? He took those presidential powers and he used them. He was the most lethal president in history using covert action, which is his wing, his right as a president, as a chief executive to use. The most lethal president in history. He was the first one to use a record-breaking amount of executive orders to push his agenda across. And when the Congress turned blue, he used that leverage to get across policy that mattered to him. CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. I built a free 3-minute test to help reveal to you exactly what your secret hidden superpower is. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, take the test, and start using your spy superpower to stay ahead of 99% of people. Whether or not you like that he did that, that set a precedent. And then when Trump took office, he was like, well, this has already been done before. So I'm just going to do the same shit that's been done before. And you can't say that it's my fault. So that's when we started to kind of see.
Now he's really the most lethal president in a different way.
In a different way. But we have this waffling now. And it took 8 years for Obama to basically exercise these rights, these privileges is the right word. He took 8 years to use these privileges. And now we're going to be feeling the ramifications for many, many decades. As presidents have to choose to reel themselves back in, or the other two branches of government have to step up and do what they're supposed to do and be that check and balance.
It doesn't seem like we're ever going back.
There's no
think
check
we
and
are.
balance now. I mean, you know, the Supreme Court used to be for, again, like the bleeding heart liberals among us, like, well, at least, well, not anymore.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you that I don't think there's any going back. And I think that the amount of time it's going to take for us to find some semblance of stability is such a long period of time that we have to be asking ourselves the question, do we want to be here in the middle of all that adolescence, or do we want to go somewhere else and exist somewhere else while the American community, or the American people figure it out?
Let's get to the power structure of the world that has basically been uprooted. since it was established after the Second World War, because that's what you're talking about, right?
Correct.
You're talking about the change in global power dynamic after the Second World War. And for a long time, there was American superiority, control. And what you're saying is, in this infighting and instability, that's now at risk.
Correct. And it's even worth going back. You can actually see how during the first Bush administration, the policy was set in motion for other countries to start taking advantage of what we weren't focused on. So we were focused on terrorism and war on drugs and global policing.
Also known as the war on people of color.
But we were engaged in all this activity. That's where our money went. If you talk about it like an everyday person sitting at home,
Looking at their budget.
exactly.
Yep.
Your paycheck came in and you chose to put this much money towards this global war on terror. Well, that's not what your neighbor's putting their money in. And that's not what China or Russia or North Korea or Iran were putting their money into. They were putting their money into other efforts, right? And that's how we woke up at the end of the global war on terror in 2022 to a modernized China that controlled shipping and supply lanes, that controlled rare earth minerals, that controlled new loan agreements with third world countries, that had basically cloned telecommunications and had cloned the ability to make microchips. We wondered, like, how did they do this so fast? They didn't do it fast. It took them 20 years. It's just that for those 20 years, we had our heads so deep in the Middle East that we weren't focused on anything else.
And the return on investment is pretty low. Like, not that much was accomplished in terms of the progress made.
We made a lot of people hate us who might not have before.
We broke international laws, which, just like the Obama administration before the Trump administration, created a new precedent. And that empowered countries like Israel, like Syria, like Turkey, like Russia, to just completely abandon the idea, when it's convenient, of international order and international justice. It's tough.
We're going to get to global order in a second, but I want to circle back to the Epstein answer that you gave, because implicit in that answer of it not serving their interests is an implication that there is damning evidence in those files. Otherwise, it would serve them to release them.
And I'll add to this, because I know Jihi, her face just twisted. You all, it's recorded. Her face twisted.
If you're only listening in audio, she just left the room and she is in her car. That's what her face said to us. She's like, "Do not put me on the spot. I will not answer this."
My face always betrays me.
So I could be a CIA spy.
You're correct. What Jihi is implying is what she's implying intentionally. It doesn't serve it doesn't serve the interest of the people in power.
But take that to the logical conclusion.
And then why?
Why doesn't it serve them?
Now, the why is what we don't know, and that's where conspiracy lives. We don't know whether the reason the Epstein files aren't available to us is because he's got a picture hamming it up with some 14-year-old girl with the president. We don't know if that's why.
Have you been following what Michael Wolff is putting out? That guy is supposedly the Epstein biographer and making claims that, I have zero evidence to support, but he claims to be the expert and has seen Polaroids and has seen things that would be otherwise, if true, completely damning.
Yeah, but these people are so slippery. Apparently, you can be in a photo with a 14-year-old girl and still be like, we were just posing for a photo. I mean, that's what happened with Prince Andrew.
Michael Wolff claims that these are topless 14-year-olds or younger, so that's a little bit harder, but
Right.
doesn't imply guilt of,
And this is the legal issue, is that, and also, feeds into, does it feed their self-interest? Because the prosecutors have a lot of discretion on who to prosecute. They do not prosecute unless they have enough evidence to bring it to trial and convict. So they have to look at the evidence. And even if they have damning evidence, number one, if they think they're going to bring a case in the future, they can't let that out. Number two, if they have evidence, but there's not enough to bring the case, out to charge somebody, they can't let that information out, because how many people of power are you going to bring down with circumstantial evidence, right? Because that's what those people are going to say. That's circumstantial evidence. You don't have enough to prosecute me, and now you're defaming me.
And the thing to understand is America survives as long as the American political structure survives. All the politicians understand that. So what can't happen, and this is a big part of the reason why 2 years ago I said Donald Trump was never going to go to jail. Never. Because you can't put a former president in jail. If you were to do that, that's sending a signal to the entire world, hey, America doesn't have their shit together. Hey, we're not as stable as you think we are.
I mean, I thought electing a person who is not a politician who used to be a reality show star was already evidence of that.
And I think we're seeing that.
I clearly was wrong.
What about the convictions he has?
I think these are all great points, right? He's got a conviction in New York City, or in the state of New York, that clearly didn't sway the voters.
No, it made people more excited.
And what you're seeing, parallel to all the stuff that people are talking about with Donald Trump, what you're seeing is a decrease in value of the U.S. dollar. You're seeing the decline in international influence of U.S. politicians and U.S. power. You're seeing Vladimir Putin. You're seeing Xi Jinping. You're seeing the North Korean leadership. You're seeing Israeli leadership stand up and push back against their own commitments and promises to Donald Trump, to the American president, right? You're seeing people stand up in ways they've never stood up before. And that's all indicative of the fact that people are losing confidence in the American power base. That's not a bad thing for the globe, but that is a bad thing for the United States, for the average American.
So you think his indictments in New York actually weaken the U.S. global power structure?
I think a big part of the reason that New York was willing to prosecute when so many other states weren't was because New York believed in justice
Over the global power structure.
Correct. And what we're seeing now in hindsight is just what Mayim said. When you prosecuted the guy, we made him a victim. And then there was a rally cry behind him of people who, the silent majority, which is the majority that the politicians fear the most, is the silent majority. The people who don't really say what they really think. People who don't talk politics at the dinner table.
Well, they're also the people that I did not realize there were so many of them who would say, this is a disgusting person with abhorrent, tactics, treats women horribly, speaks poorly about the disabled and women and people of color.
But,
and then insert reason here. My bank account, Israel, meaning, there's all these voters who are going to do whatever they're going to do despite all that. And for me, I was raised as this hopeful grandchild of immigrants of we're the greatest country in the world, we're the melting pot, just be a good person, and for a lot of people that that's not their driving force. I'm not saying they're not good people.
Right.
In many cases, I do believe. I mean, I think we have to believe that, or we're a completely divided nation, that many well-meaning, good-natured people were willing to gamble those certain aspects of things that they may believe in for a leader who, again, fill in the blank of what you needed your president to do for you.
And let's not forget that the alternative, because we're America, we only gave ourselves one alternative.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Right? That we were stuck between two bad choices.
Yeah.
And I think all Americans understood that. And I think your point is right on the nose.
I don't like to call Kamala bad.
We are well-meaning. Right? All people are well-meaning.
No, the Democratic Party stepped in it and is still having trouble recovering. And that also has shocked me. There doesn't seem to be a spiral that the Democratic Party can come out of.
And that's hard. In a weird sort of parallel, the Republican Party is also in a spiral that they didn't create.
Yep.
And they also don't know how to get out. They're like in a whirlpool that's just sucking them in.
There's a lot of complicit and I think really disgusting things going on, and it's exactly evidence of what you said, what my cynical liberal parents told me. People will always they'll always cower to power, to money, to greed. You can't trust anybody, right? I didn't want to believe that was true, but when I see certain Republican leadership really failing to step up, to me that denigrates the whole system.
I would also say that it reaches beyond just the two parties. It's international. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter where you went to school, if you went to school. It doesn't matter what part of the country or what part of the city you're in, anywhere in the world. You can count on certain inevitable truths. And one of those is that human beings will pursue their own self-interests. We are still biologically wired to do what we believe will help us survive. We have not yet evolved cognitively to the place where we're willing to accept that we might actually thrive if we were to take different actions.